Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got from New York City, Scott Gelber, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's going to talk to us all about how he helps Series A, B SaaS startups generate qualified sales opportunities through Google Ads. And he's got a 3 million plus pipeline generated for clients in 2023. And I think it's going to be a great addition to the audience that are interested in startup founders. Scott, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Briefly chart your journey and how it led to what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I run a marketing agency that's a growth marketing agency that's focused on driving qualified sales meetings for SaaS companies, specifically in the Series A and Series B range through Google Ads. And the way I got here is actually that was what I did as a career. So for 7+ years, I actually was a growth marketer inside of SaaS companies. I worked for both large and small companies, but a lot of them in that Series A, Series B range where they were starting to gain traction with their product, had good product market fit, but they were pretty early on in terms of figuring out their growth strategy. So I would come in, build the strategy, refine it, and build the systems to help them get consistent sales pipeline month over month. So after doing that for several years, I actually got asked by a friend who I worked with at a startup to come in and help them as a consultant on the side. And I did it, and I realized that I was able to provide a lot of value to the company I was working with. And so I thought it was just a cool way to leverage my skills. And instead of doing it for one company, do it for multiple companies. And that's how it started. And it's been evolved into another engagement and another one. And now it's a full-time thing.
Fascinating. And we'll start off the conversation is one thing that's really interesting is why Google Ads? Because Google Ads are very expensive. So if you're a startup, are there other pipelines or just why Google Ads?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing I'll say is, I wouldn't say it's the best fit for everybody. And this is something I learned over my career is that there's not a one size fits all strategy for each of these startups. Each of them are going to have a different channel or avenue that's going to help them grow the fastest. But that being said, so some of the things we look for when we're evaluating if we think this will be a good fit is one, the size of their addressable market, meaning like how many total potential companies are there that they can sell to. If that is even, it doesn't even have to be massive, but if it's anywhere above 10, 20,000 companies, it could potentially be a good fit. But a company, for example, that is only going after the Fortune 500, right? It's not the right strategy for them. They're not going to get in front of those companies through this channel. There's a little bit of volume. The second thing is, are they in an established category? And what I mean by that is, are their competitors doing what they're doing? Is there some familiarity with what they're offering? Because the truth is, in Google search, you only search things that you know, right? If you want to buy shoes, you search for shoes because you know what those are and you know that you need them. So for a lot of startups, they're bringing something brand new to market, right? That's never been created before. And the truth is, no one's searching for that solution because no one knows it. It's brand new, right? It's not commonplace. So if you have those two things in place, on top of doing keyword research to make sure that there is actual search volume for your service that people are searching for, it can be a great fit. And to go back to your question, the reason we focus on Google Ads first is, quite frankly, that's where we see the results the fastest. The reason being is, based on what people are searching, you can infer where they're at in their buyer's journey. So if people are searching for content marketing software on Google, they already know that content marketing software exists. They're already starting to evaluate different vendors. They're already very far down the funnel, right? So what we've seen is, if we can very actively target these bottom of funnel potential customers, they convert a lot faster. And with other advertising channels, I think they're all great. I don't have anything against any of them. They just take more time. If you think about LinkedIn is a great channel because you can target people by companies and job titles, but we can't infer where they're at in the funnel. So we could be talking to someone who has never heard of your company. We can be advertising who's never heard of your company, someone who has never even heard of the solution that you're offering. So it takes a lot more time to educate them and get them to a point where they're at that stage where they're ready to evaluate a solution. So that's why we start with Google Ads. It's where we see the biggest impact quickest. And then from there, we can build out a more cohesive strategy.
Interesting. Yeah, and there's for the startup founders there's always this dilemma because you only have certain amount of runway, and so you want to make sure that your ad spend is getting a ROI. You talk about how to save thousands in wasted spend on Google Ads. What are the biggest mistake B2B companies are making with Google Ads?
Yeah. So there's a few things. The first is the keywords that people are bidding on. As I mentioned, like what we do as a strategy is we bid on high intent keywords that indicate that someone is actually looking for your solution. So in the software space, like keywords that have the words project management software, project management tool, project management platform, right? These people are indicating that they're looking for software. What we see a lot of times is people will bid on the word project management, right? And that has no intention that someone is looking for software. That can mean a host of different things, right? Someone can be looking up what is project management, how to do project management, what are best practices. They're not necessarily, we can't say with confidence that they're actually looking for a software solution. So more often than not, that's where people start, and they end up wasting a lot of money because those people just aren't ready to convert. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is the way that companies are measuring and tracking success. We work specifically with B2B companies, and with B2B businesses, it's all about getting in front of the right ideal customers, right? To sell. If someone's not a good fit for your service, you're not going to sell them regardless of how great of a salesman you are. So the metric they should be focused on is one, the number of qualified leads they generate, and two, how many of those leads from Google Ads actually schedule demos with their team and then become customers, right? So what we do is we measure based on the bottom of based more down the funnel, right? And we try to optimize based on which keywords bring in quality leads. We do that mostly by most of our customers use HubSpot, and it's a great tool to be able to see who is converting. But what a lot of people do is they don't have that integration. They just see in the Google Ads account the number of leads. And you can generate a lot of bad leads from Google Ads. It's actually pretty easy. So what we see is like people just drive for lead volume over lead quality. And we see that as a huge mistake because one, again, like if they're generating a bunch of junk leads, they mean nothing, you're wasting money. And two, if you're just looking at that metric, you might think that a keyword is your best performing keyword and you should spend like a lot more money on it, when in reality it's not, because maybe you generate 10 leads, but only one of them is qualified. So that's the second thing. The third thing is a lot of times people are not keeping a close eye on the search terms that they're actually showing up for. So just because you bid on a keyword in Google Ads, it actually doesn't mean that you show up exactly for that when someone searches that. And a lot of people don't know this. So what they do is they use match types that are very broad, and they don't keep an eye on the search terms report. This is a report in Google Ads that shows you actually what are you actually showing up for. And the problem is if people are not showing up for that, not looking at that, they just spend money on keywords that are completely irrelevant. And a lot of times what we see when we go on audit accounts is they spent thousands of dollars on a keyword that just had nothing to do with their brand. Really getting tight and keeping very close eyes, make sure you're actually just showing up for the searches that you want to, and actively negative matching and pausing keywords and tightening the match types to make sure you're spending all your money on the right keywords is a big thing that a lot of people aren't doing.
Interesting. And then in that light, we talked about mistakes to avoid. So how do you help companies create Google Ads strategy that actually generates revenue?
Yeah. Again, the big thing for us is trying to make sure that we are consistently generating qualified sales opportunities. And what that means is someone who fits your ideal customer profile, takes a demo with your team, has a good conversation, is now in your sales pipeline. After that, it's a little out of our hands, right? We're not the salespeople. So our theory is if we can drive towards that metric and get you consistent leads there, that's going to be what makes this a predictable revenue generation channel. And the way we do that is a few things. So the first thing is, again, setting up that tracking, typically using HubSpot to make sure that we have that in place. So when we do start producing results, we can clearly show you, okay, here are the keywords that actually have consistently generated the right people, right? And have consistently gotten you demos, not just versions. That's the first thing. The second thing is doing the keyword research, like I mentioned, really making sure that we can see very clearly. This is one of the really nice things about Google Ads is you can have a good guess ahead of time if it's going to be successful because you can do the research. So we're going to research and try to see, okay, are there keywords, those high intent keywords that indicate that someone is actually looking for your service? And we're going to show you the search volume there. So a lot of times with our clients, we'll see thousands of monthly searches of people exactly searching for their software. So that's the first thing, right? Focusing on high intent keywords. The second thing there also is we want to get as specific as possible with the keywords. So a lot of times people think just because a keyword has a lot of volume, it's the best keyword to bid on, which isn't actually true. What we found is that the keywords actually have a little bit less search volume, but are like really specific to your offering, usually bringing the most qualified leads. We have a customer that they were in estate planning software, and the keyword estate planning software got a lot more search volume than the keyword estate planning software for financial advisors. The financial advisors were their number one ideal customer. So while estate planning software brought in a lot more conversions, a lot of them were the wrong people. Whereas this lesser volume keyword brought in a lot of the right people and actually ended up being a more effective keyword in terms of driving sales meetings. So that's the other thing too, just getting really honest and specific to make sure that we feel confident that these keywords are going to actually generate results. From there, it's setting it up. And again, like making sure your match types are tight and making sure that you're actually spending your money on the search terms. And then once we've gone live, the key thing again is monitoring that metric of who is coming in and then optimizing based on that. What we have found is that a lot of times you've probably heard of like the 80-20 principle, like 20% of something generates 80% of the results. We find that a lot in Google Ads. And what's interesting is sometimes people are bidding on like 30, 40, sometimes even 100 keywords. And when you pull this data, a lot of times there's a handful that actually are consistently driving the right people, like less than 5. Sometimes it's 1. So we want to just constantly be looking at that data and cutting everything that's not working and just really figuring out how to maximize and improve the conversion rate from the things that are. Those are some of the key things that really help people avoid those mistakes that I mentioned and really make this a revenue generating channel.
Yeah. And it's all about finding the right keywords to advertise on what you described and generating more quality over quantity and 2xing your sales pipeline. And talk about a little bit about your process, how you help clients, because you talk about gaining access to systems and setting up conversion trafficking and how so clients that are interested, they may want to raise more and use your process. How do you approach it?
Yeah. So the first thing we do again is the first thing we actually do before I even start with someone is audit their account. If they have it, if they don't have it set up. If they don't have it set up yet, do some prior keyword research. If they do have it set up, I audit the account. And the reason I do that is 2 reasons. One is just to provide value, but 2 is honestly, I want to understand if I can help them. And sometimes you can't. Like sometimes you can see ahead of time that it's not going to work out, or maybe they're actually doing everything right. And for whatever reason, like there's nothing I would do that was different. So that's the first thing we do is really try to identify the gaps. The second thing then is when you start working with us that first week, we're going to give you a questionnaire. We're going to really try to understand your business. My belief is it's actually more important to really understand the market and the business and the messaging than it is to understand the mechanics of Google Ads. Actually, like that, to me, that is what makes us successful is like we actually really just try to understand your business and make sure we're bringing in the right people and the messaging aligns with what people are looking for. So we're going to really dig deep in that in the first couple of weeks. We're going to set up your tracking in Google Tag Manager to make sure your conversion tracking set up in Google Ads and HubSpot and Google Analytics 4 if you want that. Again, this kind of sets the foundation to actually be able to report on data and make those optimizations. In week 2, we're going to build out that strategy where we're going to write out here are the keywords we want to bid on and their search volumes. Here's how we're going to group the keywords into single theme ad groups. That's really important because you want to group relevant keywords and drive into very relevant ads. So a lot of times people have like different phrases or they have multiple modules in their software. And what people do is they drive them all to the same one ad and one landing page. So it's not that relevant for what people are searching. So we're going to make sure that we have ad copy and landing pages set up that are very relevant to what people are searching. So the big part of it is just, it's simple. People just want to know they're in the right place, right? If they're searching for soccer cleats, they just want to see an ad that says, yes, we sell soccer cleats. And it's like, okay, good. This is what I was looking for. I see that they do this. So some of it is basic like that. And we want to make sure that's set up to give ourselves the best chance of getting people to click and convert. From there, we're going to set it live. We're going to make sure that there's some key targeting parameters in place that we've just found across a lot of B2B companies that have been effective. For example, for some reason, more qualified leads convert on desktop over mobile devices for B2B. I think the reason is when it comes to like work-related purchases, people are doing that at their desk when they're at work. They're not really like scrolling on their couch on the weekend for software for their company. But we've seen that time and time again. So we're going to make sure that we're bidding heavily on desktops. We're going to make sure we're only bidding on weekdays during work hours, things like that to make sure that the targeting is tight originally. And then we're going to go live. And I think that's where this whole setup gets you in the right direction. But the magic really comes from learning from the data and thinking critically around how to get more out of what you're doing. And from there, we meet with our customers bi-weekly to review these results and really show them every lead and every keyword they came from and really try to understand, like, are these good? Are these not? Why not? And make decisions based on that data. So it's all, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's all about looking at the quality of the leads and making your optimizations based on that.
Mm, yeah. And so to round it out, talk about some just case studies or testimonials, how you help businesses scale their process to 2x their sales pipeline from Google Ads. And you actually have 90 days or less. So talk about some of those studies.
Yeah, yeah. I'll share one that we haven't published it yet, but we're about to, that I'm really excited about. We've worked with a company called 401 Go. They're a financial services tech company. They have a cost-effective software to administer and manage 401k plans for small businesses. It's funny, they actually worked with two agencies before working with us, and they both were not successful. But the marketing leader there, he saw his competitors spending a lot of money on Google Ads. But he was like, I know there's something here. We're just, for some reason, haven't cracked the code. So the last company they worked with told them they need to spend 20K a month, which is a good amount. And they were only able to really generate 2 to 3 sales meetings in that time. On top of that, they were getting so much click fraud. Like they were able to see it, so many fraudulent clicks. So they were in a really tough spot. So what we did is we worked with them. We lowered the budget a lot because my belief is I don't want you to, there's a certain limit you need to spend, but I don't want you to waste. Like, I want to first prove it out for you. And then when we got into a good motion where we feel like we understand things less than accelerate, we feel confident. So we cut the budget by all the way to 5K. And in a very short period of time, we were able to get them roughly 5 to 6 sales meetings a month. So that's a double increase in what they were seeing with the other agency and with a quarter of the budget. And I think the key things there were just really, again, getting back to basics. They weren't really doing the principles that we said, which were like being very tight with their keyword match types. They were doing a broad match type. So they were showing up for all types of searches that had nothing to do with their business. They were bidding on heavily on mobile devices, which again, we have found very often does not lead to qualified decision makers in businesses. And they were bidding on, so there's different networks you can bid on Google. There's like there's the search network, and then there's this thing called Google Search Partners. Google Search Partners has always been a waste of money. I don't know why it is. It's just every company we ever, it's a big waste of money. They were doing that. So they were doing a lot of these fundamentals that we knew could be fixed. And once we just tightened everything up, that's where the results started happening. And on top of that, their like click fraud went down immensely. And we didn't really do anything magical. We just stuck to the principles that we've known to really focus again on making sure we get in front of the right people and focus on quality over quantity. In 4 months, we generated 37 qualified sales meetings for them. It's just a really nice story because they tried a lot of things and then maybe almost lost hope a little bit. And we were able to crack the code to get them a really meaningful results from the channel.
Excellent. How can people contact you and check out your business and follow you and reach out to you?
Yeah. So this sounds interesting to anyone listening, we do offer free Google Ads audits. So if you want one of those, you can just visit my website, go to srgmarketing.co, and you can request time with me and we can do that for free. On top of that, I'm writing a lot on LinkedIn around these best practices. So you can just follow me. My name is Scott Gelber, and I'm sharing a bunch of content there as well that could be valuable.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much for coming on, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.